Hello and welcome to What's on My Mind with Fiona. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. There's a few things I want to talk about today. One of the first things, though, I'm going to mention is that a few days ago, I don't know, sometime in the last day or so, in Iran, there's a young woman who has shown such bravery. I don't know all of the details of what happened, but I think she was at university and I think maybe because they could see her hair or something, she was getting harassed by, I don't know, what the modesty police or whatever they're called, and they ripped on her clothing and partly ripped it off. And anyway, she kind of just ended up ripping everything off and just walking around in her underwear, so just in her undies and her bra. And it's just if you see the photos of it, it's worth, if you haven't seen them, just Google it because it's just such like it's a powerful woman, and just standing up against such terrible oppression. And her name, look, I will probably mispronounce it very badly, but her name is Ahoo Daryaei. So Ahoo and then Daryaei. So sorry if I've mispronounced that. Apparently, it means deer of the sea, but very brave young woman. Unfortunately, she has been arrested, and last I heard, they said that she'd been put into some sort of mental institution. I really fear for her safety and her well-being because if she survives, she might not be glad that she survived based on what might happen to her. It's just awful, and I just find it really frustrating that in the Western world, we're kind of arguing over pronouns and microaggressions and talking about misogyny where it doesn't exist. It does exist in some places, but a lot of places we're talking about it, it just doesn't exist. And then fighting for women's rights that we already have, and nobody was saying anything about the rights of these women, especially now because we've gone really extreme in the I know in the UK this month, I think it's Islamophobia month or something, or it's Islamophobia awareness. And this is a made up word. Look, there's always going to be some people who are kind of racist or who have, they're just bigots or whatever. That's always going to exist. There's always going to be somewhat of that. But what they've essentially done is they've just made up a word just to stop people from saying anything bad about that particular religion. And there may or may not be an issue with the religion itself or the way that some people interpret it. You can argue that till the cows come home. I'm not going to argue that with you. I don't know. But what I do know is the way it's interpreted in places like Iran is terrible. In Afghanistan, the way the women are treated is terrible. And we should be allowed to talk about that, and it shouldn't be some sort of phobe for talking about that. But of course we are, which means that all the activists that talk about hashtag believe all women, help the women, blah, 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 are the same ones that will not talk about this. They will not talk about this woman in Iran because suddenly now saying anything at all negative means you're an Islamophobe, and that's the worst thing you can be. Well, one of the worst things you can be. Just terrible. So it's just like so many feminists won't say anything about this for that reason. But anyway, this woman, very brave, and maybe she just decided that living her life of being hidden like that. I think was it in Iran this week or was it in Afghanistan, but somewhere this week they've kind of made it that women aren't even allowed to hear each other's voices, and this is really serious. It's just awful stuff. So I just wanted to mention her and just say that I think that she's amazing and amazing courage, and I pray for her and I pray for her safety. I don't know what the outcome will be for her. I suspect not anything good, and I just hope that people, I hope that people in the West will pay attention and will start to listen. But I'm afraid that just in the political climate at the moment, people won't say anything because of the religion. It's about, you can say anything you want about Christians, they will go out of their way to tell you how terrible Christians are supposed to be. But you just cannot say anything that relates to that religion at all, or you're evil and bad and you're an Islamophobe. And what's going on in Iran is terrible, whether you blame the religion or whether you blame the regime or whether it's a combination of the two. I don't know. I'm not going to argue that point because I don't know enough about it. All I know is what's happening is wrong. And the world should have a problem with it and say something about it. So just thinking of her and just sending love and prayers and things like that. And I hope that the world sort of starts paying attention to these women. This is what a brave freedom fighter looks like. Now, those uni students that are running around with their keffiyeh, whatever it's called, trendy scarf, free Palestine, all that carry on. This is what real freedom fighters look like. That freedom fighters are not like Hamas and Hezbollah and people who are deliberately populating areas with innocent people so they get blown up. Freedom fighters are women like this lady here. So if you're not quite sure what a freedom fighter looks like, please check out this lady, and just see, be inspired to see what real freedom fighter is. Ahoo, check her out. That's what a freedom fighter looks like. It's someone who's got skin in the game. It doesn't cost you anything to get up and just be trendy like the rest of your university buddies and say free Palestine. It ain't going to cost you anything. It just gets you in with all of the in crowd. It's costing her a lot to stand up, and she is, and it's very, very brave of her. So, look, the other thing that's happened in the news this week is in Germany. They've brought in new self ID laws, and the self ID laws in in Germany are actually very, very strict, to the point that if you, and they came in, I think, on the 1st, so the 1st of November, so today is the 4th of November, I'm recording this, they came in on the 1st, and what they do is, I'm just sort of looking in my notes as well to see, but here we go. So the Self Determination Act to be implemented has been implemented the 1st of November. There's a 10,000, I don't know if it's pound or euro, I think it might be euro, I don't know, but fine for exposing a transgender person's biological sex or dead name. So, for example, with someone like Bruce Jenner, who now calls himself Caitlyn, if you call him Bruce, you get paid 10,000. I don't know if it's euros or pounds, but you could be fined that much for calling Bruce Jenner, right? That's what dead naming is, when you name a transgender person the name they had before they transitioned. Otherwise exposing a transgender person's biological sex. So also maybe if you called Bruce Jenner him, right? So obviously Bruce is not in Germany, but this is what they're brought in Germany now. Also, what it allows parents to do is transition their babies from the moment they are born, because apparently a baby knows from the moment it's born, it will know that it is trans. That's just disgusting. That's just terrible. And so that is horrifying. And Helen Joyce, who is a lovely Irish activist, she was there in Berlin the day the laws came in, and she had, a great speech that she sort of had there, and she sort of said that, George Orwell is supposed to have said, "In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And we live in a time of deceit. The deceit we're talking about here today is the deceit of gender self-ID. It's a lie that what makes people men or women, boys or girls, males or females, is what they claim about themselves based on their ideas and feelings, not the reality of their immutable sexed bodies. And that's exactly what it is. It's just like someone just decides that they feel like a girl, whatever feeling like a girl feels like, and they don't know what feeling like a girl feels like, right? I was at my annual breast check today, having an ultrasound, and my mother died from breast cancer, and the tech went away for a while to get help to get someone else to come back and have a look at something because they're worried about something. And I'm sitting there thinking, here we go. They found a cancer, and it's like, I don't think that's what it was, but you know, these people who know what it feels like to be a woman, you do not know what it feels like to be a woman. I can assure you, you do not know what it feels like to be a woman, right? As I do not know what it feels like to be a man. I will not pretend so. I don't know, but you just don't know. The experiences that we go through, the annual exams that we go through to find out, if we're going to get the cancer that a mother died from, all of these tests and internal tests and all sorts of stuff that we have to get from such a young age. I've been having so many different sort of internal and really full on exams since the age of about 16. I'm 53 now, right? So I've had 40 years nearly of having all of these kinds of tests and having to live with what if this, what if that, what if I've got this cancer, what if that problem, what if this problem. You don't know. You don't know what feeling like a woman feels like. To them, it's more of a like, oh, I've got boobs or whatever. It's like it's just so much more than that. So just don't get me started on what it's like to feel like a woman. You don't feel like a woman. You just feel like a man who likes to dress like a woman. That's what you feel like. Anyway, I digress, but yeah, just it's the reality of being a woman. And no, they don't know it, as I don't know what it is like to feel like a man. So I would not pretend to know because I don't know. And in this speech of Helen, she also sort of talked about how we see the harms in our children in regards to this ideology. Like I've said a million times before, I'm not talking about individual people being cruel to individual people, especially children and young people going through this challenge. It's an ideology. It's a dangerous ideology. It's really harmful for these children. And Helen Joyce said, we see these harms most acutely in our children in the mental health crisis that is sweeping through schools as they are encouraged to see themselves as fragile and to reframe every challenge as trauma, to think of the project of growing up as one of making specific and often idiosyncratic identity claims, not just about gender, but about physical and mental health conditions, often self-diagnosed, and treating other people's lack of interest in our special selves as hate, to regard puberty as avoidable rather than one of life's two great development sprints, second only behind babyhood. And so this is just she's absolutely right. And these self ID laws harm women, and we've got the self ID laws in Australia as well. I don't have the £10,000 fine or whatever it is, but essentially now women have to accept men in their private spaces, and if they don't, they're bigots. And in some places, they get huge big fines for it. It's disgusting. It's terrible. When women, Helen said, when women cannot say no to men, we do not have rights. And a woman who's been raped cannot insist that only another woman carry out the forensic examination on her body that has been violated by a man. She cannot turn to the support of women-only spaces to recover and heal. She cannot form women-only organisations where she can talk about experiences that only women go through. She cannot tell men who intrude on everyday spaces reserved for women to get out. And no, it's not all men. However, when we open up the door to some men, we do open up the door to all men. And do we even have to open up the door to some men, even if they're the nicest men in the world? We are allowed to have our own spaces. So are men as well. I don't have a problem with men having some of their own spaces too. We should be able to choose, and we should be able to have safe spaces away from the other sex if that's what we want to do. So the other thing is, let me just go over here and just let you know some of the other things that are happening in the news. So a medical study of 68 women who are taking testosterone revealed that 87% had developed urinary symptoms such as incontinence, while 74% had bowel issues. The average age is 28 years old, and they're calling this healthcare. Right. So this is what happens when you're taking testosterone. And what happens is women go through menopause and they start to lose their bone density and all sorts of issues at such a young age, and they don't understand that this is what's going to happen. So let me just go through. Oh, the other thing that happened in the news this week, which was really great, is a whole team of volleyball players has stood up and said no to having men on their team, and good on them. They've just got to be doing this. That's just how it works. The other thing that happened, because there's so many things that happened this week, I just want to tell you all the things that happened. Okay. So the other thing that happened is, so there was GenSpect had their conference this week, and there's Google GenSpect and on YouTube, whatever, and there've been some great talks. I've been watching the talks from there, and they had their conference in Lisbon in Portugal, and they had their conference there because that's where WPATH had their conference. Now GenSpect have been created to basically create some guidelines around this gender stuff that kind of make sense and sort of calm things down and back things off and be realistic and like just look at the reality of the safety around these things and to tell the truth. And they've been created in response to kind of WPATH. Now, WPATH are an activist group that are masquerading as a sort of like a health, as a like a medical body, and they've gotten away with it. And essentially, it's their guidelines, it's their rules that kind of have been followed by so many hospitals and things, following the WPATH guidelines as if they're absolutely true and they're not. And we've sort of, after the Cass report that came out with Hillary Cass early this year, we know that their guidelines are actually not true. They're actually just a bunch of stuff written by activists. And anyway, there was a Eliza Mondegreen on X. She was talking about the fact that she was actually she was at the WPATH conference, just checking it out and seeing what they've been talking about, and apparently. Okay, so she said apparently essentially what they've kind of said is, oh, well, we've been busted. This is me interpreting what she's saying here, right? This is not the actual words that she's saying, but essentially, and some of it is and some of it's not, but essentially she was saying, basically, they're shifting to a more vibes-based evaluation model under the guise of centering trans voices because the actual medical-based was not medical-based and was not science-based or fact-based. So they're just going to the vibes-based things. So it's like, oh, well, it turns out that, the data we said that would as I told you last week about the data that turned out to tell you that it was really problematic. So basically, it's regret to inform you the positive outcome data that we thought was going to save our field, it didn't come back the way we wanted it. So now we're centering trans voices by a vibes-based evaluation. So this is what she's been seeing at the conference, what she saw at the conference last week. And then this is her words, but she said, so far the uptake of our global child sterilization campaign, which is what it is, has been disproportionately white. Oh, no. We promise to do better and start confusing and sterilizing more non-white children as soon as humanly possible. Please hold us accountable to our diversity, equity, inclusion goals. So they've not been diverse enough in transing the children. They're just transing the white children. Why can't we be fair and kind and just destroy the lives of all the children? Let's be diverse. This stuff is just like, it makes my brain hurt, right? It's like, oh, we're not being inclusive enough. We've got to just do these horrible things to all the children. Oh, my goodness. That's not the words going through my brain and not, oh, my goodness, but they're the only words I feel like I can say. But the words going, they're just like, oh, my, like what the actual, anyway. And then this is Eliza's word. She said, unfortunately, some patients appear to be undertaking longer than expected gender journeys, with an increasing number of young people even desiring to return to their initial embarkation points. This was entirely unforeseeable. It was entirely unforeseeable that people would realize that they're gone mental and they shouldn't be transing themselves and taking the hormones and having surgeries, and maybe they should just go back to the body that they were born in because that's the body that they're supposed to be in. That was unforeseeable. Oh, my. But on the plus side, when our patients regret what we did to them, that means we were successful in prioritizing autonomy, which is what social justice is all about, according to Tumblr. Regrettably, we neglected to include a chapter on ethics in our recent standards of care. However, we are delighted to inform you that ethics are already infused throughout the standards of care, with the exception of a few chapters like the one about eunuchs. You know, they've got a chapter about eunuchs in their latest version. They kind of release these standards of care, like the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual for mental health issues. They release these like it's as if it's like it's that, and trying to make out that it's like that's not that, right? They've got a section on eunuchs, which is they linked back to where they got the information from, and it was from a chat group of basically disgusting men talking about how much they want to turn children into eunuchs. they wrote like a standards manual that they recommend to doctors and health professionals based on a reference point of a chat group of disgusting people who want to do these. That's who they are. They're activists, activists masquerading as some sort of health group. This is WPATH I'm talking about. So um, the okay. Oh, okay. So then they just were talking about different pronouns and stuff. Um, Furthermore, we are well aware of the serious problems in our field, such as the overly binary nature of our quack assessment tools. No adult medical professional should ask preschool age children questions like, suppose you weren't born yet. Um, the fairy asked you, would you like to become a boy or a girl? What would you choose? Questions like this reinforce harmful binaries and leave gender flux 4-year-olds out in the cold. Yes. However, we're pleased to report that the other assessment questions have stood the test of time, such as the more open-ended and inclusive, if my magic stick could fulfill your greatest wish, what would that be? Uh, so, yeah, there you go. So the other issue here too is that the DSM, which is that one that I told you, which is the manual that's used in mental health care, like the real manual written by real people, that has taken these gender issues. So what do they call it? Body dysmorphia. They've taken it out of the mental health area. They've created a whole separate area that is just a medical thing of being the opposite sex or whatever. So what they're trying to do and what they're doing and what they've done is they've taken it away from being a mental health issue, which is it is, and turned it into just a choice or whatever. It's like I've said it before, but if someone came up to me and they were thin as a stick and they told me that they identified as a fat person and wanted to go on Ozempic or wanted to have stomach staple surgery or wanted to be on a 500 calorie diet, you wouldn't say yes. You would actually identify that this person has some sort of body dysmorphia or dysphoria or whatever you call it, and they're mentally ill. But we don't do the same thing for children who want to destroy their bodies. And the main reason they want to do it is because they're getting encouraged so much. It wasn't even a thing for girls until we started talking them into it, and now they're all sort of wanting to do these terrible things to their body. So these are the kinds of things that have been going on in the news this week. I'm just checking if there's anything else to report to you before I go. Further down, so just checking. Yeah, no, that's pretty much. Look, there's so much of the news this week. Like literally, today is the day before the election in the United States, and this is going to be a really big one. Whatever happens, I think there's going to be some unrest. Unfortunately, people have got to the point where they don't trust anyone, and certainly don't trust the media, because the media are just full of rubbish, and they don't trust either side. So if there's not a conclusive win, but one way or the other, there's going to be interesting times to see sort of what happens. So we will see what happens in the world. Essentially, from my voting point of view, like I'm in Australia, so I can't vote in that election, but I would always choose to vote for the people who know what a woman is and are not transing the kids. That's where my choice would be. That's kind of my, if you haven't noticed, it's one of my non-negotiable issues, that we shouldn't be harming children. And I don't see why it's so radical to say we shouldn't be harming children, but apparently it does. It's a radical action to say something like this. Anyway, I might leave it there this week. So I'm a bit late with this episode. It's been really busy, been a lot on, and please, like, subscribe, share, tell other people about this podcast. I'd like to hear your opinions on some of these matters, and essentially, look, I believe in letting individual adults live their life in a way that makes them happy if they're not harming anyone, if they're not sort of, if it's all about consenting adults, all of that sort of stuff, that is fine, as long as I don't have to be part of your delusion, and I don't have to lose my safe spaces, have to call you different names, have to allow you into women's sports and into girls' change rooms and all those kinds of things. And if you're not harming the children, if people aren't harming children, then I really don't mind. It's their business what they do, and I just dress how you want, whatever. It's great, but you don't have to destroy your body. And unfortunately, these children are being convinced that that's what they have to do. That's the only thing they can do to be happy, and they're being lied to about the fact that this is going to make them happy. And I believe it rarely does, or if it does, it's not for long. Eventually, they realise that they've been lied to. Anyway, all I want to do is make sure that we save the children, and I'm not about telling adults what they can and can't do with their bodies, but it's the children cannot consent. They simply cannot and should not consent, and they should be allowed to grow up, and they should be allowed to have a puberty. And actually, that's something I saw this week. I can't remember who to credit it to, but somebody said, it was in a reply to a video that I saw, and they said that puberty is a human right. And puberty is a human right that all children have a right to let them have their puberty. Puberty is a very, very important human right, and not having it can destroy your life forever, and change the trajectory of that person's life forever. So puberty is a really, really important human right that all children should be allowed to experience. Anyway, I will leave it there. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you again next week. And please like, subscribe, share. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.